everybody, and welcome to the Winner's Journey podcast, where you hear from inspiring figures to unleash the winner in you. I'm your host, Viviana Puello, CEO of Art Tour International, and today I am very honored and excited to present our guest, Patricia Karen Gagic. She is a master artist that unifies art, writing, philanthropy, entrepreneurship, women's empowerment, and meditation. She's an award winning author, an accomplished international contemporary artist, an international certified artist, a certified meditation specialist, and the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award, Universal Women's Network. She has been featured in the pages of R2 International magazine, and also she has been interviewed for a TV show, and I could not miss but inviting her to share her journey and her incredible story here in our podcast. Hi, Pat, and welcome. I am so honored to have you with us. You are quite an inspiration for myself since I've been working with you, and there's so many facets of you. You have been able to accomplish so much in your journey that I really want to share from the beginning so that our audience can hear how you started, any challenges you found along the way, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. And thank you. I'm super excited to see you again. I love our chances when we have a chance to, be face to face. Wish it was in person.
True, 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 true. So, how did you start your career? How did your journey begin?
Uh, so, Viviana, I had such a love for creating, and I always thought about, being an artist. And even when I was really young, everything to me was about art. But reality check, my dad, my mom, they said, you're never going to be a full-time artist. In the world that exists now, you need to have a job. And so after going through many decisions and whatnot, I actually became a banker. And I found myself falling in love with mathematics, with business, with entrepreneurship. And for the time that I was, working in the bank, I mean, I was only 25 years old when I became one of the first female bank managers for the Bank of Montreal. And I still, to this day, when I think back of, sitting in the office and talking to all these CEOs and corporate leaders, how I had the courage and, the amount of work that I had to put into, finding the skills and just proving that I could do it and, earning the respect from my peers. And when you think back, back then it was definitely the old boys club. And, I would walk into a room and there would be, 400 men in suits with white shirts and red ties, and there were very, very few women. So the challenges were always there, but I always felt supported. And I think that, the nice part about when you make a decision to do something that someone else, challenges you, it just spurs that, I even more, I will do it, I will do it. And along that way, I was still drawing. I loved working with ink. I wasn't painting then. And I would do these pointillism drawings. And I just got into this sort of like surrealist mindset. And as I continued to do them, I felt my sensibilities were also maturing. And then I had the opportunity to work with paint, watercolor. And that's really kind of, the very beginning. So I was very left side, right side thinking.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it was all during that time, a lot of work that had nothing to do with art at the moment, right?
Yeah. And again, of course, we all have personal experiences that impact us.
Yep.
And I did have some very, some very difficult times. So for example, shortly after I finished high school, I had a childhood sweetheart, and I lost him, so you make a decision in your life that, oh dear, you have some really, really deep heart suffering. And then my father also passed away just a month after my 25th birthday. And then my husband's brother was in an accident, and he became a quadriplegic. And those were challenges that our family had to embrace. And emotionally, you are adjusting to this new way of seeing things. You lose people, there are people suffering, and then at the same time you're trying to create your own world. So I think the impact of having these losses, and there were other things that did happen, they put you in a framework where you begin to evaluate how you see things, how you feel about things, and then what you do. So, for my whole entire life, I've been serving people, and trying to help, really understanding that, unless you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, life's got its challenges. And, there's this collective consciousness of helping people. And that's been a part of my entire life. And, I think how I reveal that ultimately comes through into my paintings. And that's where now I see, you know, sometimes they're joyful, and then other times I think there's blotches of anger in there. And I think, but I'm not an angry person, but these are all inside of this emotional, vehicle that we have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think our life challenges oftentimes become that sort of backbone of, how we reveal our uniqueness. Some people don't have the ability to express themselves, and I really wish that, everybody could have a chance to find their way through art. Because if you could tap into something, let it go, clear the canvas, you might reveal something that says, wow, something that I thought was really horrible and ugly is actually okay. So I think art, and you, Viviana, more than anybody, understand art as a healing mechanism. And I do too. Yeah.
It is, it is. And you have tapped into so many different forms of art, like writing and painting, poetry. I Going back to what you were saying about I'm not an angry person. Why am I painting this? There's something, and I'm gonna share this with you because I totally trust your wisdom. And it's a question I have, and it I had that this week happen. I was watching one super hero, one of those like teenage series, just to
Yeah.
entertain myself. And one of the things that I saw, somebody had the superpower of being an empath and feeling everything that everybody felt. And for the first time in my lifetime, I could, the message just came. And I could understand for the first time why sometimes my emotions are so intense. And I think artists are empaths. And sometimes those emotions are coming out and you're just picking up that emotion from, like you say, from this global consciousness, right? And we just pick it up. Maybe we were around someone that wasn't very happy, or someone that had a lot of anger. Do you share that thought? What do you think about that?
Yeah, Viviana, the big piece of the puzzle, of course, is whether people want to accept, the global consciousness that we sit in, this field of energy, molecules, vibration. And if you are a sensitive person, or you have studied, or you've opened up, the channels in your mind to accept things or see things in a different capacity, then definitely you're going to feel what other people have been putting out. You're a beacon,
Right.
and it's very, very real. I completely understand that, and I'm always encouraged that when people take the time and they reflect back, that is when they can use this intuition, this tool that they have to actually help other people. And if it can be done by words, that's great. Painting, and sometimes it's just being present.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of energy and consciousness, you had quite an experience at the beginning of your journey with a mentor. Can you share that with us?
Yes. So there has been something that I love, and that's talking about karma. And I still believe that, everything that you create, but when you show up, it is what was supposed to happen. I mean, there's many people who write about that, Dr. Joe Dispenza in neuroplasticity. But I had the privilege of going to France. It was one of those crazy, my husband just kept saying, let's find a place to go. He found this place. And when I went to pick up the keys, I walked in and saw this incredible painting of a white horse, very abstract. And I looked at the name on the bottom and it said Dragic, Dragic. And I said to this gentleman who owned the painting, I said, "Oh, it's a beautiful painting. It's very different." And he goes, "Oh, it's Dragic." And he's in France, and he's, in the top 10 percentile of the Provençal artists. And I said, it's something, the mystery of just being in the energy of something. I wanted to meet him. So when we got to France, we tried to make that happen. And originally he said no, but then finally he did. And meeting him in his atelier, this was in Savoyon in Mont Ventoux, I walked in and he had images of himself with Christo and Picasso, and he had exhibited, with some of the most famous artists. And his mentor as well was Wiesbuch, who was also, one of the most revered artists. And I felt as if I had tapped into a time zone, another generation that just didn't, I never expected it. And I didn't think he would even give me 1 minute of time. But as we were walking back to the car, he said, what do you want in life? Basically, is it fame? Is it, money? What do you want in life? Why is this art so important to you? And the bottom line was, no, I just love art. I love painting. And then he said, I'll give you 1 week. So conditions were that I had to learn to speak French because he doesn't speak English. So I took 38 hours of tutor lessons and all the books I could find, the French immersion books like Le Baron, all the books. And I showed up 6 months later speaking enough French that we could communicate. And that 1 week was a shock for me because it was like I won a lottery ticket just to be in the presence of someone who understood the the secrets of art. I mean, he could take any painting, and he still can, any painting that has ever been painted, and he can reproduce it. I have been with him now for over 20 years, and I've gone back and forth sometimes once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year. He had an exhibition in Avignon at one of the prestigious galleries that was open at the time. And I flew there on a Friday or on a Thursday to be there for the opening on Friday, and then flew home on Sunday, just because, you're in the presence of something that goes so far beyond what you would ever, feel. And even though I know in another generation and another life, his work will be revered and whatnot. And that's my intention, to make sure the world knows about him. But I spent so many hours sitting with his in his atelier, looking at one small painting. He chose one color, and I spent 8 hours trying to figure out how to make that color. And that was using the Matisse palette and the combinations that he had shown me.
Wow,
What a journey!
it is. But I think something that I see in you, and this is, we have to be totally open to what our passions are. You knew what you wanted. I
I
think
was
that's the
driven.
secret, right? That's the secret. Like when the motivation it's outside of yourself, it becomes even more difficult. But if the motivation is in your heart, you love art and that's what you wanted to do. And
Yeah.
that proves it. That motivation comes from in here. That passion, that desire. so that you could be open to this, because not everybody would do it.
I think I shocked myself because I knew, I mean, imagine you're walking into an atelier of someone who is his whole entire world. It's like, I call it like he was in a time warp. He'd never had a job. He lived in this fourth, fifth century turret, like in this little tiny village. And everything in his mind was something so different. And, I walked in thinking, what right do I have to be here? Believing that he would even communicate with me or that I fit. And what he said, and it's interesting too, because about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he wrote a letter to me, and it was, I'll have to find it and share it with you, but basically he said what inspired him. He doesn't teach, and he was offered a position many times at Beaux-Arts in Paris, and he's never accepted that. But he said, it was my determination that he fell in love with, that he knew there was something. And he said, how um, I was not even stubborn. He said it was just this confident, I am supposed to be here. And it's the mystery, I think, the mystery of life. And so, yes, he's my very best friend. He's my mentor. I'm honored and I just, I can hardly sometimes in his presence even speak because I feel, you know, so intimidated. Even now, over 20 years later, I'm still feeling, what a gift, what a total gift I had been given. And what happens is, Viviana, you want to honor that. So I have worked really hard to continue to master and master and master the ideas, the palette, um, putting myself in positions where I don't like to think anything is disappointment, even though people say, oh, I didn't win, I didn't get picked. Oh my goodness, for me, that's just simply the privilege that you had to even show up. Just the privilege of being in that same moment or in that same room. And it's just all part of this magical mystery, and you have to love it and enjoy it in between the moments, which is why I think, I'm creating the karmic art experience, which is going to be based on mindfulness, meditation, and then just looking at the truth of who you are in this moment without judgment, and allowing yourself to be free to enjoy that moment. So,
That
yeah.
is so important. That is so important because a lot of, especially entrepreneurs who are a large part of our audience today, we work setting goals and looking at that goal, and in between comes the burnout. And
Yeah.
I think that's the reason for not enjoying now, today, this moment that we're having. And whatever it leads. I think once you set the intention, the goals are met if you enjoy the now.
Yeah. If your intention is to, I mean, I think you have to have realistic
Of
intentions.
course. Yes.
I mean, seriously, like I can't wake up this morning and say, well, by next year I want to win a Nobel Prize.
No, that's true. That's true.
Like, have to have some common sense about, you know, and then enjoying the process, which I think for a lot of people, they, or maybe they just picked the wrong thing. Sometimes people say, I wanted to be a brain surgeon, but, to go through 8 years of training, it's just not going to happen. So it's sometimes not wasting your time. It's
Yeah.
like choosing the best thing that you can do. I don't like to think, I understand burnout. I've certainly walked up, gone to the studio and looked at the canvas, and, maybe 2 days earlier I had this brainwave, I'm going to paint this. And then the minute you actually are in the energy and the field of the canvas, you go blank.
Mhm.
It can happen. And you just go, oh my gosh, like what happened? And then whatever influenced me the previous day or whatever I'd eaten, I have no idea, but it changed. So But I honor the fact that I recognize that. And rather than take a deep dive into the negative aspect, I let it sit and I'll accept it. And I inspire myself to believe that the following hour or the next day, whatever it is, I will walk back in there with a new mindset, that I will free myself from whatever radical thought I had the day before that was, not inspiring me. And the other thing I like to do is I like to look at photographs, magazines, things that can inspire, go for a walk, clear your brain, and just like snip, snip, snip all the things that you thought you were attached to, and then allow new things to surface. I think people get so stuck walking into the same environment all the time. Certainly COVID has shown us, how complex that is. We don't get to travel. We're not doing the things that maybe would inspire us. So people are locked into their four walls, and I know that's been very, very difficult for a lot of people. So it's that courage, the stamina to be able to say, okay, in spite of this, what should I do? And maybe, it means taking up reading or writing, looking for different ways to improve your mental state. Yeah.
Now, you are a meditation practitioner. What advice can you give someone that is just beginning? Um, they don't know how to meditate, and what is it that they could do to start? Because I remember very young in life, I wanted to start meditating. I wanted to start practicing meditation. It took a lot. It took a lot from the point where I wanted to the point where I really started, and then
Yeah.
realized it's not as difficult or as challenging as I thought.
When I was really, when I was younger, when I was growing up, my my parents were very Catholic, very Christian, and we went to church all the time. And I actually sang in the choir. I would go to mass at 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then at 8:30 I would walk to school. And I did that for years, all through high school, grade 7, grade 8 in high school. And I think what I learned was I was wiring my brain to know that when I walked through the door of the church, I would be calm, that it was a place of sacredness. And so as time progressed and you get older, I would find myself moving my mind and wanting to go back to that place where I felt calm. So, irrespective of what room I sit in or where I am, I can still tap into something that I think I trained myself. So, for people who are just starting out, I like to think the two simple things that you can do. One is find that room, that space where you can actually name it and say, okay, this is my calm, my quiet place. And then the simplest thing, and I love doing this, is start listening to calm music, listen to chanting, listen to the voices of those who have taken the time or have found that essence. And even if you think you don't know how to meditate, that's not the tag. What you need to do is put your body and your mind into a vibration that will allow you to feel one with what you are doing in the moment. So, again, with that beautiful music happening, automatically you start losing your thought about something else or what was bothering you, and you start taking that into your system. And what it does, it slows your breathing down. And so the minute you actually can listen and you're quiet and you're in tune with the music, your breathing starts to change. And that automatically sends signals up to your brain. And you begin to realize that you are kind of like if someone said to you, "What were you thinking?" You'd go, um, gee, I don't think I was thinking anything. Well, that's exactly what has to happen. You need clarity. You need to have that emptiness. So when we can find a way to start, and it can be so simple and so beautiful just by listening to music, I would say that's the first thing. The people who struggle, it's because they're hyper going through their life, and then they walk into a room, they sit on a meditation pillow, and someone is sitting in front of them saying, okay, take a breath, do this. And you're, oh, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this isn't right. So I always believe that the most comfortable way to enter into anything is to dissect it. And if that means that you just simply find your moment, you create the time, the opportunity, listen to some of this, recommended beautiful music that is out there, and just let that start to absorb. If you decide that you wanted to train your mind into something further, there's a million different things on the internet. And I went to the University of Toronto and I completed the applied mindfulness and the transformative mindfulness programs. And a lot of that was based on a lot of Buddhist teachings. And it opened up a path for wanting to know more about the mind. And of course, it takes you into different directions. You always find, yourself challenged. Um, I also did a sacred pilgrimage to Nepal and to Tibet and meditated in caves where Padmasambhava had brought, the full enlightenment. And again, challenge yourself to go into a place where you can make yourself feel your own preciousness, importance, and uniqueness, and then just like it. Not do anything more than just, I like being where I am. I like that quiet. And as you develop your technique and you start doing more breathing and you take away maybe take away the music because it might not be necessary, in many, many ways, you are already developing a technique that will bring you that clarity.
And this is, I love what you're telling me. I'm like amazed that you went to the cave and you're meditating here. You have such commitment, Pat. I really admire you. Yeah.
It's
And
a,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
sorry, no, I was just going to say, if this is the life that you have right now, don't waste it. You know, there's so many people are always looking for other people to give them the direction. It's a roadmap. If you already feel something and you can literally sit in a room and say, okay, let's make a list of the 10 things that I'd like to do in my life. Doesn't matter what they are, hot air ballooning, crossing the desert, canoeing up in the Arctic. That shows that there is something that is motivating or that you do have something inside of you. Now, if you can't do those things for whatever reason, financial or COVID, or it's just not realistic, take each one of them and dissect it. What's an alternative to that that is reasonable that I could do that would push me out of my
Mm,
framework and give me that experience, whether it's as silly as this, and I'll make this simple. Um, I did not, for years and years and years, like to have dinner by myself. If I was at an event, I would not go to a restaurant. I never felt comfortable, being in another city, having dinner in a restaurant by myself. Have no idea where that came from, but it was torture. I would get room service. I would go outside, get something, and come back to the hotel. I would not sit in a restaurant. Still haven't figured out why, but I got past that. And I made the decision many years ago now that at the events I was going to, that it was okay for me to sit at a table. And it changed and rewired so many things in my mind because I really wanted to understand what the obstacle was. And I started seeing things differently. And I would notice things up on the wall. I would notice people. It would be so, again, it's like something super simple, but I think people really, really have to have much more respect for their human life. Yeah.
absolutely. And I agree with you. Well, we're
Thank you.
almost about to wrap up the conversation, but I last year was so simple to ask this question, and then we were hit with with the virus. But I used to ask, so what are your plans for the year? And now things have changed, right? And we've learned that the year brings surprises. So you're such a spiritual person, and I do want to ask you, what do you think of this year? What do you see for yourself, and how are you preparing yourself in the midst of all this uncertainty that a lot of people are experiencing? How do you keep your plans for the year?
Yeah. So I'm, I have to say it's probably one of the busiest years that I've had because I've been invited to participate in different events which have been online. So I spend a lot of time doing podcasts or speaking to people. I'm also in my studio and I'm writing several books actually. I think that I've got 4 or 5 on the go right now. And I think it's been a blessing to have the time to actually um, format some of these thoughts that might not have been easily tapped into because I'm allowing myself to have the time to just focus. And
Mhm.
having that focus gives me more clarity. So I really miss, our visits to New York. I miss, traveling to France and spending time. But I'm also taking advantage of this and saying, no, this is discipline. And, for some people who say, I get up in the morning and I don't have anything to do and I'm bored and I watch TV, I'm like, oh, give me your hours. Like, get busy, do something, like, take the time. I've done a lot of courses online. I did the Canadian Indigenous course. I did another course through Yale University. So it's being focused and really looking into what do you see at the end of the year and what do you want to accomplish. So of course goal setting is one thing, but you have to get up in the morning and you have to be disciplined and you have to be happy.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. Well, for those who are listening, I'm just gonna repeat: you have to be focused, disciplined, keep yourself happy, and not just set goals but achieve them. Right?
Yeah, as
Awesome.
best you can.
Thank you. So, if anybody wants to hear more about Pat, you're going to see her links in the description of the podcast. If you're on the video, the links are below, and feel free to visit her and reach out to her. She has a world to share with you. Thanks, Pat, for being part of this podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Viviana. It's always so great to spend time with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.